Hello lovelies, Sindal here coming at you with another video. In this video we are going to talk about single strand knots, fairy knots, or the scientific name for it, which is
trust that exactly where you are is where you're meant to be. So keep your chin up so your crown doesn't fall. Remember, you're royalty.
Trichomoniasis is the scientific name for single strand knots. As the amount of people with this condition increased, they kind of gave it a cute little name because most people don't really look at hair shaft disorders as something that need to be treated professionally by a doctor or as something that you need to look into scientifically. Normally people will tell you like, oh, you can use a product and this will fix your fairy knots, this will fix your single strand knots. Well, by the end of this video you will know the cause of single strand knots, some solutions, and prevention. So if you want to get to the bottom of your single strand knots, aka your trichomoniasis, then make sure you keep watching. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe here to my channel, so that way you notified every time I post another video, right? Mechanical damage is one of the main causes of trichomoniasis within the hair shaft. Now, this is something that affects the hair shaft from roots to ends. So this is not simply something that, you know, is only on one part of the head. You could possibly not have the splits on the ends, but you can have knots throughout the top and through the middle of the hair shaft. So that is where you would most likely see it. And here on the screen you can see a couple of examples of what trichomoniasis, aka fairy knots or single strand knots, look like. They are here. Now, one thing you will notice is that they all are tangled and knotted in a specific way. So let's talk about the reasoning behind that. Let's get to some of these causes. Now, everything that I'm saying you can research on your own, do your own research. You don't gotta take my word for it. Don't be getting mad. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving you the message. So, over manipulation of the hair shaft. Most of the time it doesn't really have anything to do with the style when it comes to the over manipulation, but the consistency and the repetitive nature of the style in whatever way that may be. And over manipulation will then in return lead to splits and rips within the hair shaft, because if you are pulling and tugging on the hair too much, you then weaken it a little bit, which in return will cause the strands to get weaker, and then they're gonna break. Like, girl, what will happen if I keep pulling on your arm? After a while it'll get so, and then you gonna be like, don't be pulling on my arm no more. Wet detangling. Now hear me out. Most people think that wet detangling is the best way to detangle your hair because it's the easiest way, but the easiest way to do things isn't always the best way. It is a fact that fibers, just fibers in general, and your hair is a fiber, but hair is weakest when it is wet. So the more you comb or detangle your hair wet, the more you style your hair wet, the higher your chances are breaking the ends, causing the ends to split, or causing different microscopic rips and tears within the hair shaft. Other types of hair disorders, like you just having one split within the hair shaft, like one of these pictures here or one of these pictures here, that ends up leading to trichomoniasis, single strand knots, because when you have practices of over manipulation, or if you have practices where you're doing your hair when it is at its weakest state, you are causing those ends to split and break, which is really important. Stay with me. This gonna be a quick one. Stay with me. Product buildup. Product buildup is something that really ends up causing split ends. Why? Again, hair is a fiber, and even though it looks like, if you have a big clump of your hair, it looks like it's a lot of hair there, but really in reality you have hundreds and thousands of strands on your scalp, and the more product you put on the hair shaft, the heavier those fibers are, and the heavier the fibers are, the more weight they have to hold and the more weight they have to hold, the more strain the hair shaft becomes, and then it gets weaker. And so with you having product buildup that's putting more strain and more weight on the hair, plus you are combing your hair when it is wet most of the time, you're detangling your hair and styling your hair mostly when it's wet, and you have over manipulation, we're gonna have some splits, some rips, some tears, or at least some really weak areas and really weak spots. Moving along, poor maintenance practices. Now, it is an argument across social media that I'm not getting into. Do what you want to do in the streets. This your world. Okay, this your world. But there's a little debate that goes on across social media on if whether or not you need to trim hair. Me personally, I am on the side of believing that you need regular trims, but I am also on the side of understanding the difference between a trim and a haircut. If you are getting a trim, there is a possibility that at that 10-week mark, you don't really need to cut anything. At that 10-week mark, if you don't have any ends that have begun to fray or that look like they're going to split, then you don't need to cut anything. Most of my clients, when they would come in for their regular trims every 8 to 10 weeks, it would be, I would call it fairy dust. You wouldn't see hair on the floor because it wasn't noticeable. The hair wasn't long enough for it to be like that thick and that visible. That is what a trim is. And the reason that you trim your hair is to prevent this disorder. Trichomoniasis is onset by not having proper maintenance, because you can do something as simple as, like, let's say you had a long day at work and you had your hair in a bun all day and you irritated and you just like and you like rip the bun out, or rip the not rip but like tightly yank on your ponytail holder, and let's say it was stuck on the ends and you just give it a light little tug. That could break the ends just a little bit. That's why every 8 to 10 weeks you trim, just in case you had a day like that. Just in case something like that happens, you get a trim to ensure that it doesn't begin to keep splitting up the hair shaft, because once it splits up the hair shaft, you have hairs that are now separate. So now that these two hairs are separate and they went from one strand to two, if you are doing certain trims with your hair, let's say all you do is braid it up in a couple of braids and just leave your hair braided, walk around looking like Felicia. Then at this point, like, yeah, most likely you will get a couple of snugs and pulls because your hair is weaker, because it doesn't have any memory. Just the same way that if you were to sit in a chair for like 10 hours in the same spot and not get up to do anything, the second you get up to use the bathroom, your legs are going to feel weak, like you're going to fall on the floor if you just get up and try to run, because everything needs memory. Well, so does your hair shaft. You're having proper maintenance patterns, right, that keep the ends from splitting and they keep the hair shaft strong so it's not weaker and prone to breakage. All right, next up is something that is more so something that is going on internally. So due to product buildup, you could possibly have, you know, follicle blockage and things of that nature. So when the follicle is blocked, right, and the scalp does not have proper oxygen flow, if the scalp doesn't have proper oxygen flow, then I need you to remember the bulb of your hair shaft is connected to your blood supply. I'll put a picture somewhere, so probably right there. But it's connected to your blood supply, and because it's connected to your blood supply, everything needs oxygen. So you need oxygen coming from the things you ingest into your body and from the outside world too. So if your scalp is completely blocked and full of product and things of that nature, plus you have been doing over manipulation and maybe you've been detangling your hair with water, or let's say your hair is always wet because you always have it full of conditioner and gel and things of that nature, then you in return would also have a combination, right, of trichomoniasis and hydrofatigue, which hydrofatigue is moisture overload. So you would have moisture overload and single strand knots together, because your hair practices have caused for your hair shaft to get weaker, which in return causes for the hair shaft to split. And when the hair shaft splits, splits, like I said, the ends will wrap around each other the same way like if you had a bunch of strings just dangling, right? Eventually they're gonna wrap around each other and knot. That's all that's happening with your hair. And then the second thing, which is, like I said, more so on a scientific level, by you blocking the oxygen flow in the canogen phase of the hair growth cycle, where the hair is supposed to detach from the blood supply so that the hair can go into the telogen phase for a second to rest before it falls out and starts the new hair growth cycle. But if the hair shaft cannot get proper oxygen flow, or if you have hydrophagy, which is where your follicle is swelling and unswelling and swelling and unswelling and swelling and unswelling over and over again, then what happens is your hair growth cycle is slowed down. So because your hair growth cycle is slowed down, you'll have a bunch of your hair follicles at a bunch of really different keys, because contrary to popular opinion, your hair follicles are all independent. They are not connected to each other. So it's not like, oh, I put a product on my hair and my whole scalp is going to respond the same way. No, because only 80, it's a certain percentage of your hair in the anagen phase. It's only a certain percentage in the canogen phase, the telogen phase, and the estrogen phase, right? So all of your follicles are independent. They're in different phases of the hair growth cycle. So if you throw your hair growth cycle off, then you will notice that you may have hair that's really, really long at the top and then hair that's really short in the front, no matter what you do. That doesn't mean that your hair won't grow. It just means that you have an imbalance in your hair growth cycle, and the majority of your hair growth cells in the front are growing at a really, really rapid rate, a lot faster than the ones in the back. That's all it means. So if your hair is constantly shorter in the back than it is in the front, or constantly shorter in the front than it is in the back, and you don't have no broken ends or nothing, your hair growth cycle is off balance, right? And single strand knots are a part of this, because if your hair is a bunch of different lengths, even if your ends aren't broken, if your hair is a bunch of different drastic lengths, it's the same thing with the slinky. If you have a bunch of stuff hanging at certain lengths, the shorter pieces are naturally going to wrap around all of the longer pieces. So that is where the knots are formed. So I know that was longer drawn out, but that's the best that I could do to put it in a nutshell without cracking it. Or as you crack it, we're going to crack it now as we get to some of the solutions. So happy smile, guys. There's no solution. There's no cure. Trichomoniasis has no cure, guys. Let me explain. Your hair shaft is not the same as your skin. Even though your hair, skin, and nails are all made of like the same proteins, your skin and nails it doesn't renew it. So for example, if I cut my skin, if I cut something right here, it'll heal up. It may leave a scar, it may not, depending on how well it heals up. But if you have, like, let's say these were my real nails, they're not, and let's say one of them broke, I can put a sealant on it for a second, some glue, some gel, but no matter what, it's not going to get stronger. And the longer the new nail gets, the weaker the split is going to get. So let's say, like I said, I just let it go and I let it keep growing. Eventually the split's going to split all the way to the end and it'll fall off. But see, a nail is going to split this way versus the hair shaft is going to split going up. So as it splits going up, it makes it to the hair's follicle. And when it splits within the follicle, eventually it disconnects your hair shaft from the blood supply. And then after that, you have bald spots, which lead to different forms of alopecia. So there is no way that you can fix this disorder. The only thing that you can do is prevent it from happening and change your regular practices so that way it doesn't happen again. You are more so in prevention. And so to be honest with you, the only thing that you can do if you have single strand knots is cut your hair off. So you have to cut where that split is, where the hair is wrapping. So just pulling it out, like just pulling out your single strand knots, you're going to keep having single strand knots, because by you pulling it, when you pulled it off, you created a brand new split. So then the new hair is just gonna take its time and wrap around there, and that's why single strand knots are never ending. To get rid of single strand knots, aka trichomoniasis, what you need to do is get your hair stretched completely, right? Naturally straight hair is stretched when wet. Naturally curly hair, it is stretched when it is straight. So you want to only cut the single strand knots out of the hair when the hair is stretched. All right, so for curly hair, you want to blow dry your hair out and you want to get your hair straight, right? You don't have to get it bone straight like you're doing the silk press. You can straighten it out on like a 350, right? But get it straight enough so that you can see your ends, and everywhere you see the lines of demarcation, go ahead and get rid of it, because at those lines of demarcation is where the ends are wrapping around each other. That is where it is manifesting itself. When you cut the splits off, you can then focus on sending signals to your hair growth cells to begin producing new hair growth cells. This is why people who trim their hair on a regular basis have hair down their butt, because they are making sure that they're sending signals to the body. The hair shaft is still attached to the blood supply. By you making sure that you're maintaining your ends, you are making sure that you're keeping your body in its natural cycle. Prevention. Oil detangling is amazing. If you need to know more about oil detangling, it is very, very simple. Of course, I dive deep into it on Guru VIP, but in short, you can get any type of non-comedogenic oil. Comedogenic simply means an oil that's not going to block the follicle. My favorite one is hemp seed oil. That is my favorite oil to detangle with, and I have high porosity hair. All right, so you're going to oil detangle when the hair is dry. Your hair is weakest when it is wet and is strongest when it's dry. So detangle with oil, not water, because water breaks the bond. Comb and brush your hair on a regular basis. If your hair is out, comb it. Do not just let your hair sit on top of your head without combing it for days and days at a time. The average person loses anywhere between 50 and 150 strands a day. So a lot of you, there's a possibility that you don't have trichomoniasis, and it could just be all of the hair that wants to shed out can't get out because you ain't combing your hair. So comb it. Like, comb your hair. You brush your teeth, but you don't comb your hair. Set a routine and a pattern. So if you wash your hair once a week, I need you to set a routine from wash day to wash day. If you wash your hair every 2 weeks, set a routine from wash day to wash day. Wash your hair once a month. You need to have a routine for wash day to wash day, and you need to have something that you do every week so you can cleanse your scalp. And scalp health. Scalp health is so important. The number one problem that people have is their focus is on the ends. The work is already done. The hair that's out of your head, girl, whatever is gonna be done is what's done. It's already done, girl. And all you gotta do is keep those ends maintained, and that's it. What everybody needs to be focused on is the hair growth cells that are now being produced. So what are you putting into the body to help your body produce more hair growth cells during the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle? What are you doing? Really understanding what routines and what patterns we're supposed to follow as it pertains to our scalp's profile. What is our sebum level? What is our skin cell turnover cycle? And all of these different things. If you need help figuring out your skin cell turnover cycle, your scalp's profile, and if you need help setting a routine and a pattern for yourself from wash day to wash day, whether you're washing your hair every day, whether you're washing your hair once a week, twice a week, once a month, or every couple months, 7-day challenge is going to hold your hand all the way through and help you figure out how to do it. And then once you join the 7-day challenge, you also join the group, and within the group we are all holding your hand the entire way through, and there are hundreds of women that are going through it at the same time as you. When you join the 7-day challenge, you can see exactly how many people are in the class with you at that present time. So I love you guys so much.